All right, welcome to the Young Turk. Young Turks is a heavy day in a lot of ways in the news. I know it happens quite often, but we've got the death of net neutrality, which I'm going to tell you about in a second. We've got a literal death that I'm also going to tell you about soon, and then we've got someone who came out with a preemptive admission of sexual assault, a name we might recognize. So that was a fascinating way to go about things. But some good news in the show too. Also talking about people's demise. Blake Farenthold's career is done, so that's a Republican that's gone. We'll tell you why. And then, as you're about to see in a second, some of the alt-right guys might be in a world of trouble. So that's also pretty good news too. And one more piece of good news is it's Christmas season, and you guys are going to get 3 months of membership for $25 at tytnetwork.com/gift. Go. All right, now the news. Okay. Today, okay, sorry, I got distracted by the camera. Okay. Today, a terrible day for the internet, a terrible day for America. The FCC voted for a brief second. The vote was delayed because there was a bomb threat. Never ever do that. That's terrible. We fight with politics and with our voices and our ideas, as terrible as this decision by the FCC is. Anyway, they of course got back to business, and Ajit Pai, the FCC Commission Chairman, cast a deciding vote to kill net neutrality on the internet. So the internet as we know it is not going to exist anymore. And so I want you to be clear about what I mean by that. It's not that the internet's going away, it's going to be here, but instead of having the government set the rules, and the rules that they had set was for companies not to interfere and for the government not to interfere and to allow freedom on the internet. Now, you know that's true because you're on the internet. And if the government had set regulations that slowed down your websites or charged you more, you would know it. They didn't. They kept things free on the internet. And if you're a progressive, you might think, oh, that's the government doing something right again. If you're a right-winger, you might think, hey, that's the first time the government's ever actually been in favor of freedom. Whatever your perspective is totally fine, but you know what the internet was. Now, the new rules are corporations that are the internet service providers, Verizon, AT&T, Comcast, etc., can now set the rules and regulations of the internet, and they can set them to their own advantage. They don't have to serve the public. They don't have to keep the internet free. Their only goal is to maximize profit, and they could do many things to make that happen, including discriminate among different websites, which is a disaster for the entire internet. It's a disaster for your pocketbook, and it's also a disaster politically for all across the spectrum. Because do you know for sure which way Verizon is going to go when they start to discriminate based on content? Well, I don't know, and if you think you're a right winger, and so the multi-billion-dollar corporation is going to be on your side, you might want to think about that again, because Verizon owns Huffington Post, they own AOL, Yahoo, and a lot of those companies own what you would consider liberal Hollywood. So to hand off the internet to just a couple of private corporations is a disastrous idea. So now let me give you details of what happened today. HuffPost reports the repeal rolls back so-called Title II regulations that classify the internet as a public utility, and which, among other things, required internet service providers or ISPs to treat all the data traveling on their networks equally. Those were the old rules, okay? Without the protections of Title II, those ISPs, the internet service providers, can now legally begin treating data from some websites differently than others. My guess is the first to go will be the right-wing sites because they hurt customers. You don't want to alienate all those Latino customers, African-American customers, gay customers, Muslim customers. So if you're spewing all that nonsense, good luck with the speed of your website, okay? If you're a progressive and you're looking to overthrow the established system and not have the corporations rule us all, good luck with that too. Okay, I don't think the multi-billion-dollar corporations are on your side either. Of course, now the question is, will they? Before, the companies were saying, oh, The idea that we would slow down websites or throttle your websites or in any way affect them, and to treat it so that we would make more money and our competitors would make less money. We would never. Except it turns out now that they were about to get the rule passed, and they just did, they are singing a different tune already. So last week, Comcast quietly altered a net neutrality pledge that had been on its website since 2014, removing a promise that it wouldn't, quote, prioritize internet traffic or create paid fast lanes, and replacing it with a much more cautious pledge to, quote, not block, throttle, or discriminate against lawful content. If Comcast decides on a whim to change its pledge again next week, it absolutely can. But now the government's not in charge anymore. The public's not in charge anymore. Corporations are. So if they want to change their definition of what they consider to be lawful, well, I don't like that kind of pornography. I'm going to block that, among the many different decisions they can make. But there, the most important part is, well, we're going to promise not to block the websites, but I'm not promising anymore that there won't be fast lanes and slow lanes. Guess who's going to be in the fast lane? Everything related to Comcast. Guess who's going to be in the slow lane? You. And they literally took away the pledge that they will not prioritize internet traffic. So in other words, they will prioritize internet traffic. They will have a monumental advantage. Anything associated with those giant corporations will have an enormous advantage. Everything else will have an enormous disadvantage. So now we go to Michael Powell. He's the National Cable and Telecommunications Association president. So he's going to explain, no, come on. No, these corporations will act out of the goodness of their heart. Really? So here's his lame excuse. He says, there are a lot of things in our society we don't expressly prohibit, but it doesn't mean that they're going to happen. There's no law that says I can't paint my house hot pink, but I assure you I have no intention of doing it. Oh, that's so lame. So let's think about that analogy for a second. He's saying, well, just because Comcast and Verizon and AT&T could set the rules to their own advantage, but doesn't mean they're going to. Yes, but in your analogy, you have no incentive to paint your house hot pink. But in the real world, there are billions of dollars on the line. If you're going to get paid billions of dollars to paint your house hot pink, I guarantee you would paint it hot pink. So this is not like, oh, what's Comcast in the mood for today? First of all, that's unacceptable. That's why we have a government, to protect the public, so that corporations don't rule us. We rule ourselves. That's why we're supposed to have a democracy. But that's gone now, because all of our public officials, unfortunately, have been bought off. So this is gross. So yes, of course they will change it to make more money, which then is to our disadvantage. I don't mind them making money. Of course, they're allowed to make any money they like, and they make plenty of money as internet service providers. What they shouldn't be allowed to do is to do discrimination on different websites and different platforms for their own financial benefit. They're messing with the public domain here, and that's the old rules. Okay, now here's more. The HuffPost explains, in addition to repealing net neutrality, the new FCC rules also strip state and local governments of the power to enact their own laws regulating broadband service. So not only are we making sure to kill the internet freedom here, but I'm also going to make doubly sure that the state and local governments can't go around giving you freedom. No, you're not allowed to stop those giant corporations from setting the rules for everyone in America. By the way, these guys pretending to be conservative. I know in reality, almost all the conservative voters and people on the internet are on the same side as the left and the middle in this case. This is the one thing we're all united on, okay? So, but these guys pretending to be conservatives, I thought that you guys were for states' rights. All of a sudden, they shredded states' rights. They don't care. The only thing they care about is corporate rights and corporate profits. So I do want to give credit to the two FCC commissioners that voted against it, Clyburn and Rosenworcel. Let me show you Jessica Rosenworcel as she made her impassioned plea against what they did today.
I dissent from the corrupt process that has brought us to this point, and I dissent from the contempt this agency has shown our citizens in pursuing this path today. This decision puts the Federal Communications Commission on the wrong side of history, the wrong side of the law, and the wrong side of the American public.
Hear, hear. Unfortunately, the right side lost today. So the fight is not over. Now let's talk about what we're going to do next in the fight back. Immediately after Thursday's vote, New York Attorney General Eric Schneiderman pledged to sue to halt the FCC's actions. They later said that there will be multiple states that are involved in that lawsuit, saying no, they're actually going to step up and try to protect the internet and going to go to court if they need to. And then there is political action. In Congress, Senator Ed Markey, who's been great on this issue throughout, joined with 15 other senators to contest the FCC decision via a Congressional Review Act resolution. I'm going to tell you more about that in a second. The fact that there's only 15 senators doing that is outrageous, though. Great credit to those 15, but Republicans like John Thune saying that they're going to help, and Susan Collins, well, this is the time to help. This is the time to join. And I don't know why every Democrat in the country wouldn't be on the side of net neutrality. As always, with the corporate establishment Democrats who also take donor money from these same corporations, they're a little slow to protect your freedom. So maybe they got throttled, to be fair. Maybe they're in a slow lane already. Now, but giving credit to Markey, who's been a champion on this, he says, we will fight the FCC's decisions in the courts. We will fight in the halls of Congress. With this CRA, Congress can correct the commission's misguided and partisan decision and keep the internet in the hands of the people, not big corporations. So bless his heart for fighting on that. It sounded a little Churchillian there, if that's a phrase. So the Republicans should enjoy that too. We shall fight in the halls of Congress. We shall fight in the courts. We shall fight on the internet, but we shall never surrender net neutrality. Okay, so just to explain a tiny bit more about what that CRA is, let's go to this next tweet. So Jonah Green points out that Congress is next. He's right. It's called the Congressional Review Act, and as he explains at the bottom there, the CRA lets Congress nullify actions by agencies like the FCC. Most bills need 60 votes in the Senate, but the CRA only requires a simple majority in the House and the Senate. Now, this has largely been used by the Trump administration and to have Republicans get rid of Obama-era regulations, but it could also be used by Democrats and Republicans if they are earnest about it. The couple of Republican senators that claim to be on our side on this. It could be used to overrule the FCC. So call your Congress people, call your senators. That is next step, because I agree with Ed Markey. And again, rare issue we're all united on here. We shall never surrender. Okay, now one last point about that, because this is so awkward and uncomfortable, and I wanted to show it to you because that's what we do. Okay. So today the FCC ruled to kill net neutrality, and the deciding vote was their commission chairman, Ajit Pai. He is constantly trying to make himself look cool, as if killing freedom on the internet is somehow a hip thing to do. It is not working, but it didn't stop him from trying one last time. This is his really awkward way of trying to tell people, no, it's okay, I also use the internet, aren't I neat? Now, don't look while my former employer Verizon and the other internet service providers take control over the internet and do whatever they want. Because I'm going to try to distract you with memes and the Harlem Shake. What the hell are you doing? So, by the way, as you watch this incredibly awkward video, understand that everything he's saying is not true. He's saying you can still do stuff on the internet. Yeah, you can if you pay more to Verizon, Comcast, AT&T, and the others. Or sometimes you can't do that stuff because they'll slow down those websites. So this is him trying to be cool. It's the worst. And by the way, he went and did this with a Daily Caller. I'm going to tell you at the end, one of the people in the video on what she was up to. But the Daily Caller selling out all the other conservative websites that'll probably be first on the list to get blocked or to get slowed down. So, but hey, man, if you're getting paid and you want to sell out the entirety of the internet, I get it. Try to make Ajit Pai look cool. Good luck with that endeavor. Here's the horse crap they came up with instead.
Recently, there's been quite a bit of conversation about my plan to restore internet freedom. Here are just a few of the things you'll still be able to do on the internet. after these Obama-era regulations are repealed. You can still gram your food. Are you selfieing or just... You can still post photos of cute animals, like puppies. Aww. You can still shop for all your Christmas presents online. Yes, got that bulk deal on fidget spinners. Yes, those Eclipse glasses are so cheap. You can still binge watch your favorite shows. You can still stay part of your favorite fan community. You can still drive memes right into the ground. And do the Harlem Shake.
Yeah, I believe that's called an epic fail. Harlem Shake from 5 years ago. Oh, you're so cool. I didn't notice while you destroyed the internet. He's going around crying on TV like, I don't understand why people don't like me. I'm so cool. Yeah, you're really cool, dude. Yeah. It's not about you, man. Nobody gives a damn about you. Nobody knew about you before. Nobody wants to know about you. And nobody cares that you are pretending to like Game of Thrones or whatever the hell you're pretending to do. The only thing we care about is, what are you doing? I know you think everybody on the internet is stupid. Oh, I'll just trick them. I'll do a thing with Star Wars and the Harlem Shake, and then they won't notice that I took away freedom on the internet. No, we noticed, idiot. We noticed. We know what net neutrality is. You think we didn't notice when the father of the internet said, don't do this, it's gonna destroy the internet? You think we didn't notice when the guy who invented the World Wide Web said the same thing? You think we didn't notice when millions of comments were sent in saying, don't do this? We know exactly what's going on. It's just pathetic. What the Daily Caller did there is pathetic. Ajit Pai is pathetic. By the way, one of the people dancing in the Harlem Shake with him was Martina Markota. Well, she is one of the people who pushed the Pizzagate conspiracy. Class acts all around. So, I'll go do a video with the person who pretended that there was pedophiles in a pizza chain and they drove people crazy until some guy showed up and started firing inside this pizza chain filled with innocent people. Oh, they're so cool. And they almost got people killed and now they'll destroy the internet with me. And you guys want to do the Harlem Shake? Fuck no, we don't. No, we would like net neutrality and we would like you to fuck off. Okay. I didn't think I was gonna go there at the end, but I did. Okay, let's go to Dan Johnson next. This is a sad story, guys. So we told you about this guy earlier in the week, Dan Johnson. He's a Republican state legislator in Kentucky. He got caught doing things he shouldn't be doing. Of course, he vehemently denied it. And I'm just gonna give you a little bit of background here before I tell you what happened yesterday. On Monday, the Kentucky Center for Investigative Reporting published an expose with an accuser who was a friend of his daughter, saying that Johnson raped her when she was 17 years old. She alleged that the assault took place in 2012 at a New Year's Eve sleepover party when he was a pastor. He's pastor of this church where he claims to be, the Pope of the church. It doesn't really mean anything. It's not important. He wanted to excuse his actions, so he went to that Heart of Fire church. And I'm going to show you part of that video. Or before he did this, he sang a hymn about the baby Jesus and all that, and then he said this.
In the midst of all the accusations, there's some things that are really important. I think that are being hidden in this. There are people that have had abuse. There's workplace abuse. There's all of that. But at the same time, I think that there's been people that have taken that now and just use that for political stones and political rocks. This allegation concerning this lady, this young girl, absolutely has no merit. There is no anything.
Yeah, he says there's no anything. As you're about to see, he apparently didn't believe that himself. More details here. The Kentucky Center for Investigative Reporting had published an expansive report on Monday accusing the Republican state representative of molesting a young woman, but also committing arson and lying to his congregation and constituents about his achievements. Now, everybody asked him to step down, not just Democrats, but also the Republicans. Mac Brown, who's a Kentucky Republican Party chairman, had said, following today's extensively sourced and documented story from the Kentucky Center for Investigative Reporting, we once again find ourselves in a position where we must call for him to resign, this time from the Kentucky General Assembly. So the sad news here, other than all the wrongdoing that he did, is that Dan Johnson yesterday apparently committed suicide. He went to a bridge and seems to have shot himself. So he has passed away. Part of the reason that I'm doing this story is because don't do that, man. Look, I'm not a religious person, so I don't believe in all that finding Jesus or whoever else you find as soon as you're caught. But I do believe in redemption, even for guys as vile as him. In the past, he'd gotten in trouble for making the Obamas look like monkeys. It was clear from the last segment, I'll tell you now too, I had no love for Dan Johnson at all, not 1%. But what would have been a better route? A better route is admit what you did and then look to become a better person, look to make amends. So might you go to prison? Yeah, if you rape that 17-year-old girl, you might even, not only you would lose your job and you might go to prison, but at least you'd still be alive. You'd still be, you wouldn't have left your family to fend without you. But the issue here isn't that, it's pride. Pride gets in the way. Well, if I get caught and it looks like I got caught here, I'm gonna be embarrassed and I can't stand that embarrassment. I just think the far, far better approach is to try to come to terms with it, to try to make amends, to still be there for your family. So nobody's happy about this result, and it's an absolute shame what has happened all around here. But look, I partly tell you this because one day, I hope to God you're not in a situation as dire as Dan Johnson, and I hope you haven't done anything close to what Dan Johnson has done. But one day, you'll be in a tight spot, because we all are, and you'll get despondent, because we all do. So understand that there's always a better way, that there's a way to get to a better spot, even if it's incredibly painful. He could have had decades to make amends, and instead he's now gone, and his family is left alone. So it's a very, very sad day, and everybody wishes it hadn't come to this. There's 1,000 better ways to take responsibility than to do this. Okay. Now, last story from you, for you guys today, and then John's going to come in, and we're going to do a lot of show together. Okay. This one is also a disturbing story, but has a bit of a happy ending, or potential happy ending. Okay. So there's a lot of allegations of sexual harassment, and it appeared that Chuck Schumer might be next. He's the leader of the Democrats in the Senate. There was some stories going around about how he might have harassed someone that worked with him. Well, it turns out that's not remotely true, and the rest of the story is where it gets really interesting. So NBC News reporting that the apparent smear, which was first reported by news website Axios, took the form of a fake legal document alleging inappropriate behavior by Schumer toward a former staff member. Well, they found out very quickly that it wasn't true, and I'm going to show you how in a sec. But NBC News explains Schumer, during an unrelated news conference on Wednesday morning, said his office would pursue, quote, every legal path against the sender. Uh-oh. Schumer then said it was a phony allegation, forged, false from start to finish. Well, that's what he claims, but this saying we believe the women, right? So how about the woman? Is it a real woman? Yes, it is. It's a former staffer that worked with Chuck Schumer from 2009 to 2012. Well, it turns out this mystery was not hard to unravel. All they had to do was talk to her. So here's NBC News on that. A draft legal document accusing Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer of sexual harassment is a forgery, the woman purported to be his accuser told NBC News on Tuesday night. The woman said that the allegations are false and that she has asked police to investigate. More details here, reported by Katie Hunt and Alex Johnson. The woman, a former staff member, said that the claims in the document are, quote, completely false. Quote, my signature is forged. Even basic facts about me are wrong. I've contacted law enforcement to determine who is responsible, said the woman who spoke on condition of anonymity because she believes she's the victim of a crime. Then Chuck Schumer's office put out a statement. His spokesperson, Matt House, said, "We have turned it over to Capitol Police and asked them to investigate and pursue criminal charges because it is clear the law has been broken. We believe the individual responsible for forging the document should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law to prevent other malicious actors from doing the same." Now, there are a lot of malicious actors out there who try to smear people online. I've talked to you about them. A lot of them are on the alt-right, and they think it's funny. They think it's a legitimate way to conduct a political debate. You don't have to be right. You could just lie, and you could lie in any way you want and smear anyone you want with any terrible charge that comes into your mind. Well, it turns out not if you do a forgery, and that might be some significant legal trouble. Well, here they thought they were being really clever because it was going to be a double whammy. So let me go to Law and Crime, that website, to explain. The false document was sent out to multiple media outlets and journalists who quickly settled on the complaint's lack of authenticity. Their original genius idea was, we'll smear Chuck Schumer, and it doesn't matter if it's proven to be a lie. Almost everything the alt-right comes out with is proven to be a lie at some point. But the big headlines will be what everybody remembers, and at least we'll have smeared him for a certain percentage of the population who will then never hear the correction and never hear the truth. We'll have gotten Chuck Schumer. And if we can, maybe we'll get people to believe it, and then we'll run them out of town. That would be amazing, then our lies would work. And then secondly, if it turns out we get caught later, but the press ran it, we'll say, got you, fake news, but we tricked you into running a fake story. Now, it turns out they didn't trick them, and almost all the outlets picked up that it was fake, and it turns out it isn't fake news. They do a pretty good job of fact checking, right? So who is behind this? So right now, the police and the authorities are not sure, and we're gonna let that investigation play out. Can't wait to find the results. But here's one piece of evidence. Charles C. Johnson, who's one of these alt-right trolls, wrote before the story broke, currently reading the sexual harassment settlement documents of a major Democratic US senator. And he wrote also, quote, "Michael Cernovich and I are going to end the career of a US senator." Oops. My guess is that the authorities will want to talk to those two and try to figure out why they were speaking in that way before this news story broke. What do they know that the rest of the public did not know? And what did he mean by those comments? It was definitely not nice knowing you. If people go to prison over this, that would be fantastic. Finally, a little bit of justice for all of the preposterous smears and outrageous things that were said about innocent people throughout. Now, we'll have to see if that's what it comes to fruition. We'll have to see if these guys are involved or not involved. That's for the authorities to decide. But whoever did it, can't wait to see justice. It's going to be a great day in America. So whoever did it, bye-bye. We'll be right back. All right, back on the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur, John Iadarola with you guys. I'm going to read some comments here. First one's from YouTube Super Chat. It's in reference to something we talked about yesterday, but I want to read it to you guys because it's kind of neat. Top Damage Wizard, a guy that you probably would like, John.
He's well known.
Wrote, USA Today sucks balls rant got me into activism. Wow. If that, look, guys, from time to time I hear that. I'll go to a conference or something and I'll run into an activist and they'll say, you guys got me started. God, that feels great.
That specific rant.
I mean, and for that, in that case.
That rant was not in response to an editorial. That was based off of their actual front page Iraq War reporting, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Okay, I thought I remembered correctly.
Ben Mankiewicz ran into Chiwetel Ejiofor. Sorry, I'm so sorry about that. And he said that he recited like half the rant from memory.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
That's pretty badass.
Yeah. He's an actor though. They're good with lines.
They are.
So
they are. No, man. Look, if we did anything good in the world, God bless. All right. Michael Napin writes in on Twitter. Why do corporations have to own everything? Well, see, it's our job to make sure that they don't, because we're the ones who created them.
Yeah.
But if you write the code to say maximize profit, they will try to own everything because that's what you programmed to do.
Yeah.
We're supposed to be in charge, but we're not anymore. They've taken over. It's the robots that have taken over.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is one where it felt like we'd won, and then we'd won, and it got really close, and we won, and then elections have consequences. We don't win anymore.
Elections have consequences. Okay. Mark says, how will this affect the TYT network? Well, Mark, that's actually not clear. As I've said in previous cases, it could be that, hey, we're outsiders and they'll slow us down, right? Or charge us so much we can't afford it. But our two biggest partners are Google and Facebook. They can pay the ransom, and almost all of our partners can pay the ransom. But they're being good guys because that could actually kill all their competition. And I actually think that they've done, even though they would have to give money to Comcast, Verizon, et cetera.
Which could trickle down to hurting us.
Yeah.
But not necessarily, but it could.
Right, but it could kill off anything that isn't on Google or Facebook and might actually help them. But
Silver linings.
Yeah, so they have decided to do the right thing and fight for net neutrality. And so it's theoretically possible that, hey, sorry, you didn't make it into Google Preferred, you didn't make it into Facebook Partnership, so you're done. And we would have an advantage, not a disadvantage. But that's terrible. I don't want that. I actually believe in a marketplace of ideas and a free marketplace. So, but it could also hurt us too. Okay, so LL Bishop writes in, getting very tired of Donald and his crew giving our property away to business interests. That's right. Whether
Bears Ears and
Bears Ears, the national parks, and the internet, among many others. And then finally, Shaun of the Dead says, congratulations, Ajit Pai. You're now the Martin Shkreli of the internet. Karma's a bitch, and one day you'll get what's coming to you. But guys, okay. The Martin Shkreli point is fine, but don't say this stuff about, you'll get what's coming to you and stuff.
Yeah.
I know look, I'm mad at him, and a lot of people are mad at him.
Especially that video, which was like the most condescending thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's absolutely, right? But it really isn't personal. The right wing, I think, has read Saul Alinsky way more than the left wing has, and apparently rules for radicals say make it personal. But but I don't care about that. If it wasn't Ajit Pai, it'd be some other random dude, right? That Verizon paid off or Comcast or AT&T paid off.
Yeah, and Trump was going to put someone in who was going to accomplish this.
Yeah, and if first of all, if you do anything to Ajit Pai, that's terrible and immoral, and you'll lose the moral high ground, and it'll make their job easier, not harder, right? Then they'll become victims. Don't do any of that, let alone the fact that it's like, just don't mess with him personally.
Don't do any of that. Wink.
No. Okay,
no.
So
no violence.
We've got to fight back and effectively and politically, and we can and we will and we'll win. Okay, and when progressives win in 2020, we will reverse this at a bare minimum, even if Congress doesn't act now. Okay, so it's very understandable to get frustrated at the guys who voted the wrong way here to take away internet as we know it, but they would have just gotten some other schmucks to do it.
We're stacking up a big tab on things we got to reverse when things finally go back to rationality. And the thing is, maybe there's like this huge wave and things are easier to get things done than usual, but it has never been the case that it's just let's do everything we want right now. Everything is a goddamn battle. And so let's not keep having to add things that'll take a month or 3 months out of President Sanders' first term. Let's try to keep things somewhat rational so that he can actually push the country forward rather than just trying to bring things back to what we had a few years ago.
But I want to be clear about this, man. This is why it's so important to elect a progressive Democrat rather than a corporate Democrat in the 2020 primaries.
Yes.
So it's very important in 2018 primaries too, but for the president, we can't have another Barack Obama come in, have Bush and Cheney move the ball 90 yards down the field and Obama move it back 5 yards and then declare victory. No, if they moved it 90 yards down the field, we're gonna move it a fucking 100 yards. We're gonna score, we're gonna go through the end zone and into the fucking locker room, okay? This stuff is unacceptable. So if you have a progressive president, yes, on day one, and we're not messing around, net neutrality is back, and if you don't like it, that's your fucking problem, okay? Our elections that we win also have consequences. So hopefully in the right direction. All right, we got to do the rest of the news.
Okay,
right, go ahead, John.
And we're gonna start off on some light material. Unfortunately, now today's actually a pretty dark day in the news. There's gonna be a lot of sexual misconduct and consequences for it, but something even darker to begin. Today marks the 5-year anniversary of the tragic mass shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School. On that day, which even though it's been 5 years, I still remember when we saw the breaking news and when we did that show. I can't believe that 5 years have gone by. But on that day, 20 children and 6 teachers were killed. Here are their pictures. Those children are incredibly young, so young.
The thing that got to me, John, is that they would have been 6th graders today.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, they'd be developing personalities and interests, having ideas about what they would want to go on to do in their careers maybe. And unfortunately not, their lives were taken thanks to a monster. Here are their names. We hopefully will not forget them. It's one of the reasons on days like this we like to look back and recognize those who were unfortunately taken from us. You see there are the children's names and then at the end the names of the teachers. And thankfully, because it's an anniversary, there's a lot of conversation on social media, profiles of the children and the teachers, some details about their lives. I saw Jake Tapper was tweeting out individual facts about each one of them. And so it's important that we do remember the victims. But we do have to recognize at the same time that while a certain group of people will look back and think about this, many won't, and many more won't act. And so it's not really a surprise that in the 5 years since that, there have been at least 1,576 other mass shootings with at least 1,788 people killed and over 6,000 wounded as well. And in these mass shootings, those woundings in some ways can be almost as terrible as deaths. We're talking about, in many cases, wounds by assault rifles, dreadful life-changing wounds. Now that's generally, but even if we're gonna go back to something like Sandy Hook, nearly 1,000 children under the age of 12 have died from guns in the US in just the last 5 years. 1,000 kids under the age of 12. That's one fatally shot every 44 hours, the equivalent of every other day. And this has been allowed to happen because too many people, especially people in power in this country, do not look back on Sandy Hook and remember what a tragedy it was and dream of never having something like that happen again. Very often, they're thinking about their donors, whether from the NRA or from conservative organizations that don't want to see any sort of gun control that could stop that sort of act. If we could bring this up, Harper's put out a tweet today talking about the consequences, summarizing the number of bills that have strengthened gun control since Sandy Hook at 14 and the number weakening it at 37. So those are our priorities, at least on a state level as a country. And that's not to say that we haven't achieved anything. There have been positive moves in terms of legislation in some states, typically the states that were already doing better when it comes to gun control.
We should start calling this by its proper names. It was the Sandy Hook massacre, and we are allowing massacre after massacre after massacre, and we are allowing these folks to terrorize us. And I don't just mean the shooters; I mean the lobbyists and the politicians that enable the shooters, that basically put those weapons in their hands and say, have at it, Hoss. I mean, you think in this country, there's not a certain percentage of the country that has significant mental issues, that is in other ways crazed, violent. Some obviously have nothing to do with violence. Some small percentage of people who have mental issues are violent. But it doesn't have to be a very big number. It doesn't have to be a very big number at all to produce 1,700 mass shootings since Sandy Hook in the last 5 years. How many massacres are we going to allow before we do something? And the answer is
thousands.
Yes, and it's only gotten worse. Orlando was a bigger number, and then Vegas was an even bigger number.
Yeah.
And our politicians that are supposed to represent us, instead, of course, represent their donors, and they collectively are saying, we don't care. We don't care that those kids died. We don't care that we have nonstop massacres, almost one a day in this country. And we're never going to protect the citizens because we get paid by the NRA.
Now, we do want to at least talk about, there were attempts over the past few years to do something to try to address some of the specific, the most egregious mass shootings. So we're having, unfortunately, a problem with one of our graphics. But Joe Manchin, along with one other senator in the wake of Sandy Hook, put forward a bill that would have required background checks for all private gun transfers rather than simply through the federal systems. And unfortunately, thanks to an incredibly deceptive smear campaign by the NRA, that did not pass. At the time, Barack Obama said this: the gun lobby and its allies willfully lied about the bill. They claimed that it would create some sort of big brother gun registry, even though the bill did the opposite. And in fact, the bill would have strengthened the illegal prohibitions against any sort of organized federal registry while allowing background checks for private gun transfers. So that died. In 2013, about 1 month after the Sandy Hook shooting, Senator Dianne Feinstein introduced a bill with 24 co-sponsors that would be a new version of the assault weapons ban of 1994, which expired a decade later. Now, in that case, Democrats and Republicans, thanks again in no small part to an organized lobbying campaign by the NRA and other pro-gun organizations, voted that down. And so no assault weapons ban, again, after Sandy Hook. And most recently, after the Vegas massacre that we talked about, in which, thanks in no small part to bump stocks, the ability to turn a semi-automatic weapon into functionally an automatic firearm. We have the Automatic Gunfire Prevention Act of 2017. That was in after the shooting in October. Dianne Feinstein and Representative Carlos Curbelo introduced a bill to ban those bump stocks, the only purpose of which is to effectively break the law. That bill was stalled when the NRA voiced its opposition, and while we are being told that they are looking into the possibility of banning bump stocks, months are passing by. And now you can go and you can get one of these devices if you want, and you can replicate the Las Vegas massacre.
The federal background check law that John mentioned first had a 93% approval. If you can't pass something in a so-called democracy that has 93% approval, you might not be in a democracy.
Yeah. Now, if you're concerned about the possibility of one of these shootings continuing, and you know that there have been attempts to pass bills, but they have been shot down, sometimes by the NRA and their donations, generally by the Republicans, in some cases assisted by some Democrats as well. Well, now we have Donald Trump, and he says that he's going to protect us. He's the one person who can solve our problems and protect us. So on this anniversary of the Sandy Hook shooting, Sarah Huckabee Sanders was asked about what he is doing to help stop these sorts of massacres from taking place, and here was her response.
Today is the 5th anniversary of the Sandy Hook massacre, in which so many children were killed. Since that time, what has President Trump done to try to protect the American people against a similar type of massacre? Does he think anything's been done? What is the administration trying to do? Is there anything at the executive level that he thinks needs to be undertaken?
Look, I think that there are a number of different ways that we look to protect our citizens every single day. One of the areas that the president has been outspoken about, not necessarily to those two instances, but just more broadly speaking in terms terms of national security and protecting individuals, certainly through border security, stronger vetting processes, and looking at whether or not there are other regulations that we could put in place that would offer protection.
These weren't people who entered the United States.
Right, and I said I'm speaking more broadly in terms of national security as a whole. And look, this is a president who knows that his number one responsibility is to look for ways to protect American citizens, and we try to do that every single day. And whether or not there's a regulation that could be put in place or not that could have prevented those things, frankly, I'm not aware of what that would be.
Maybe something to stop the gun from being sold in the first place. That seems like it would have had an effect. And so her answer is, we are going to do nothing to stop this sort of massacre except convince you that the true threat is scary Muslims from abroad.
So the number of mass shootings we have dwarfs the number of terrorist attacks. Dwarfs. So if you're actually worried about your family's safety, you should be worried about a shooter near you, not some foreign invader or Muslim terrorist or even a right-wing terrorist. Yes, right-wing terrorists act out in America about at twice the rate that Muslim terrorists do, but even they are small compared to random mass shooters. So terrorism is fairly infrequent, thank God for that. I wish it didn't exist at all. But mass shootings happen at the pace of about one a day.
Yeah.
And every time when it happens in your neighborhood, you get surprised. Don't be surprised. We're terrorizing ourselves. The real terror is right here at home. It's these nonstop massacres funded by the NRA.
I mean, we told you the stat that a kid under 12 dies thanks to guns every 44 hours. Imagine if a scary Muslim terrorist killed a child in America every 44 hours.
Oh my God, could you
The country
imagine?
would shut down.
Oh my God, if a Muslim
But
terrorist...
it's a gun, so we like those.
Wow, that's a great way of putting it. So every other day, if you heard in the news, another child under the age of 12 has been killed by a terrorist, and another one, and another one, and another one, and it's a bloodbath. It's an endless bloodbath that never ends. What would we do? We'd rip the world apart in endless wars to try to address that. But when it's ourselves doing it with nonstop guns and weapons everywhere because our politicians are corrupted, that we go, well, 93% of Americans believe there should be federal background checks. I guess there's nothing we can do. You know what we're doing? We're surrendering, and it's unacceptable because we're all getting killed out here. Literally, our kids are being killed, and our politicians do nothing because they're completely corrupt. And the NRA laughs all the way to the bank. It's gross. And of course, Donald Trump isn't going to protect anyone. The only thing he cares about is demagoguery to protect his own political interests. He doesn't have any interest in actually protecting your family.
And so this is the 5th anniversary. At some point, perhaps Cenk and I, we will be looking back 10 years after Sandy Hook. And I hope that at some point something will have been done. But based on the experience of the last 5 years, I don't have a lot of hope.
Okay, we got to take a break, guys. I know it's a heavy day, but we do have more stories, including the guy I told you about. A pretty famous person comes out with a preemptive admission of sexual assault. It's a fascinating moment in history. We'll talk about that when we come back. I have decided that I'm going to get ripped. Okay.
What?
Okay.
Like physically?
Yeah. Okay. What, you don't believe me?
I 100% don't believe you.
I will get so ripped, here's my prediction, that someone at TYT will say, Cenk, you've got to stop working out.
We're tired of you winning.
So you don't believe me?
Cenk, you don't have time to do your daily duties for the main show.
Duties. I don't even have time for your daily duties. Because what you guys don't know is how great my muscles already are.
It's absolutely possible, but you can't have Leah run to the food truck to get you 2 different types of grilled cheeses with tater tots for lunch. You can't have that anymore.
Let's see what happens.
You also have to go to the gym regularly.
Let's see what happens. All I'm saying is, let's see what happens. Have I ever been wrong about a prediction? Almost never.
Been easy for me. I started off in Brooklyn. My father gave me a small loan of $1 million. All my life, I was told no.
He said I had small hands. They're not small, are they? I never heard that one before.
That 300 million is a pretty good number. We were doing a press release on it, and I got all worked up. And I said, okay, well, that's the size of the U.S. population. You know what our next target is? The size of the entire world on the road to 6 billion. Although by the time we hit it, it'll probably be 7, maybe 8 billion.
Not a big deal. A couple of days ago on the TYT network, we passed 1 billion views.
What the hell?
What the hell?
No, that's a big freaking deal.
2 billion views.
What now?
Sorry.
What did we do? 2 billion?
2 billion.
They said it couldn't be done, but it was done.
We just crossed 5 billion views on YouTube.
I mean, imagine 10 years ago thinking, one day.
People looked at you like, are you nuts? Young Turks crosses 6 billion views.
They said you couldn't do it, you can't change the media, don't try. Well, here we are, we're changing the media. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
All right, back on the Young Turks. Members of the day are Daniel Varga and Kylie Richards. So in the post game today, I'm gonna get maybe a little emotional. I'm gonna talk about all the different people who've come up to us and said that they became reporters or activists because of us. Look, man, we need some good news, and it's nice to reflect every once in a while on something positive that's happened. I'll add a couple of extra things to that. So, of course, the post games are for members, and members also make this show entire network possible. And we got a special program right now. You can get 3 months of membership for just $25. So that's TYT Network.
Good Christmas gift.
Perhaps, in fact, it's TYT Network.
Or for Hanukkah.
Okay.
Or any other holiday.
TYTnetwork.com/gift. Okay, /gift. And then we got Rebel Headquarters coming up after the show, of course, and I've got a couple more progressive candidates for you guys to check out. And we had a little bit of a rough ride there in the beginning because I rushed Rebel headquarters on air. But now, members, you will be able to get Rebel headquarters going forward, okay? And we made sure to fix that for you guys. Okay, 2 quick tweets for you. Angels Advocate says, pro-gun safety, in other words, gun regulations, equals pro-life. I'm pro-life, how about you? That would be the best way to protect life. Have your own opinion, writes in, massacre, I hate that name as it relates to children, makes me cringe every time.
It should.
Which is probably why that term needs to be used more, it hits home. You're exactly right.
Yes.
Okay, what's next, John?
Small little thing, just breaking news that I saw right before the hour started. It's, I think, good news. I don't do the quick hits anymore, but we can fit in this. Heather Heyer, the protester who was killed by a white supremacist at the major protest several months ago, the guy who ran her down has been charged with first-degree murder.
Okay.
Which is good.
Let's hope he's brought to justice.
Yes. So just something to track as that case continues. But we do have a number of different men who have either been accused of sexual misconduct, assault, harassment, or are admitting to it preemptively. So that's going to be a block of the show today, but we're going to start off with an interesting case. Morgan Spurlock is a documentary filmmaker, and you probably know him from Super Size Me. Well, today he released a statement on Twitter revealing why he believes that he is part of the problem that our society is addressing day by day right now, and that problem is the rampant sexual abuse and sexual harassment in a number of different industries that very often goes unprosecuted with no consequences and often very little discussion at all. And so he is preemptively coming out with a statement that you can of course find. We're gonna read portions of it. There's a number of other cases that he mentions, but here are a few that I found most revealing. He talked about why he's doing this. So he said, as I sit around watching hero after hero, man after man fall at the realization of their past indiscretions, I don't sit by and wonder who will be next. I wonder, when will they come for me? You see, I've come to understand after months of these revelations that I am not some innocent bystander. I am also a part of the problem. And he talks about a couple of examples of this. When I was in college, a girl who I hooked up with on a one-night stand accused me of rape. Not outright. There were no charges or investigations, but she wrote about the instance in a short story writing class and called me by name. A family friend who was in the class told me about it afterwards. I was floored. He said, that's not what I remembered, I told her about the details. This wasn't how I remembered it at all. In my mind, we'd been drinking all night and went back to my room. We began fooling around, she pushed me off, then we laid in the bed and talked and laughed some more, and then began fooling around again. We took off our clothes. She said she didn't want to have sex, so we laid together and talked and kissed and laughed, and then we started having sex. He goes on to say, light bright, she said. What, he responded, light bright, that kid's toy. That's all I can see and think about, she said, and then she started to cry. I didn't know what to do. We stopped having sex and I rolled beside her. I tried to comfort her, to make her feel better. I thought I was doing okay. I believed she was feeling better. She believed she was raped. That's why I'm part of the problem. And that is, there's others that we can get to, but that is the single biggest, most revealing, I guess, thing that he admitted to in this statement.
So first of all, he talked about that. He talked about how he had said inappropriate things to people he worked with, and he talked about infidelity. Infidelity doesn't have, I don't think it has anything to do with this. And so he brought it up as the context of his life, and that's fair, but that's just a different animal. Those are conceptual.
I think he was trying to lay out sort of a pattern of what he was understanding himself to be. He said that he had cheated on every wife and every girlfriend he had had.
Yeah. Okay, I guess that's a personal issue for him. So in terms of that, look, we can't possibly adjudicate what happened, and he's the one outing himself. But I will say this: I think what a lot of guys have to recognize is that our perceptions are different than other people's perceptions, and that's, I know it sounds so simple, but it's actually usually the #1 problem, that people can't see outside their own perspective. And so Morgan Spurlock might have, and you can decide whether you believe him or don't believe him, whatever,
about the actual details.
Exactly, yeah. But the more important thing as a national conversation is, that Morgan Spurlock might have really believed that he didn't do anything wrong, and she might have really believed that he had done something terribly wrong.
Yeah.
So it might be that neither one is wrong in the way that they perceived it. They could be wrong in the actions that they took. But I feel like oftentimes people go into their camps and they refuse to see the other side. Where the guy says, how could that be? But we were joking and it was okay, and etc. And she goes, how could he not realize that I didn't want to do it? We had said no twice. I mean, we did wind up doing it, but how did he not see that I was uncomfortable, right? Well, that's what we're trying to solve for here on a national level.
Yeah.
So just let's all open our eyes to seeing the other perspective.
Yeah, so as an aside, so when I was in grad school, my field was political psychology, which is trying to figure out the ways people think about and act in politics. But more generally, like books about the various ways that we fool ourselves and attempt to fool others, the ways that the brain just isn't composed to think about the real world the way it is now, that we evolved for a very different world, and now we're dealing with one that's far more complex and all that. So I read books like Brain Rules and You Are Not So Smart and various things like this. And it amazes me that so few people are really interested in figuring out how we think and why we think the way we do. Like, we are our bodies, certainly, but above all, we're our brains. That's what we are, and that's how we go through the day. We should want to understand it better. And so this is one area where there can be huge consequences, but think about every part of your life. Again, the mismatch between your perception of an event and how others perceive it can be very consequential. In this particular area, it might be. I don't know about the actual details of that particular act of sexual assault or whatever actually happened there. It's entirely possible that it was simply a matter of them perceiving things differently. It's also possible that everyone, especially young men, need to be better trained to understand, not in the wake of an event how they might have gone wrong, but whether something is going wrong right now and we should change our behavior as it's happening or in the future. And it's possible that if we had had better education about what constitutes consent, what sort of actions are necessary or statements are necessary to proceed with different sorts of acts, that we could avoid incidents like this and not simply look back on them and attempt to do better in the future.
And now I'm going to say something that I'm sure that some will object to. If you're uncomfortable, and I get that there's a million reasons why you might not speak out. You might be intimidated. You might be frozen. I mean, and I'm not, and I didn't walk in your shoes, and I'm trying to understand how it is, just like we had this conversation. But don't assume that the guy is thinking the same exact thing as you are. There's some chance he is not perceiving it the same way at all. There's some chance that he thinks that everything is fine. So,
well, it seems like she would say, based on these details, that she said no multiple times.
And then he perceived that they were laughing and continuing, etc. So I'm not adjudicating that, okay? What I'm saying is, if you can be as clear as possible so that there's less room for misunderstanding. It's not to blame the victim. I just want to be super clear, right?
I mean, he could at the point where if she said no twice, but then it seems like there's still some chemistry, he could ask, "Do you want to have sex with me?" Now, yes, maybe that seems weird and you should word it better. I totally get that, but there's already warning signs. So simply ask, because maybe she feels so uncomfortable, maybe even a level of fear, that she will endure something. But would she affirmatively say that she wants to? Probably not in that case.
Yeah.
And so if you're worried about ambiguity, it's not simply a receptive worry where you have to hope that they're more clear to you. You can acquire the information.
Yeah, I don't know why Morgan Spurlock came out preemptively as he did. There's a million reasons that could be.
It's probably weighing on his conscience.
Yeah, and one of the possibilities is that no, he's not recounting that story accurately. He's recounting it either from his perspective or from a purposely tilted perspective.
We have no idea.
We have no idea at all, right? So it's not about him and it's not about that situation. I'm just telling you from my perspective, I'm gonna tell my loved ones, be super clear. It's not your fault, it's not anything like that, but just to try to avoid misunderstandings, both for guys and for women, be as clear as humanly possible. And if you find that offensive, okay, then we disagree. I really, because don't assume what's in your head is in their head. That is exactly how you have miscommunications, and then in some instances, terrible things that happen that haunt people forever.
I want to read just the very final paragraph of what he wrote about what his goal was in this. He says, I am part of the problem, we all are, but I am also part of the solution. By recognizing and openly admitting what I've done to further this terrible situation, I hope to empower the change within myself. We should all find the courage to admit we're at fault. More than anything, I'm hopeful that I can start to rebuild the trust and the respect of those I love most. I'm not sure I deserve it, but I will work every day to earn it back. I will do better. I will be better. I believe we all can. And so that is what he's stating as his objective. I can say that I've read, I mean, it's anecdotal, but some editorials that find his statement incredibly unsatisfying. His focus on himself, the belief that simply by stating this thing that it takes away any of the possible guilt from it. And so, you can receive it however you want. It is interesting though, because this is, I believe, the first case of this sort of preemptive, unprompted by actions and all that. And so it's interesting to see how this will be received. I mean, we may never hear from the women who've been affected by this, but it is an interesting development in this moment we're having as a society.
Yeah, and by the way, the workplace hostile environment he created was, it appears, far more clear, and he settled that. So there's a number of issues that he brought up, and it's fascinating.
Yeah. Want to move on to a similar topic?
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah. The pressure is increasing on Russell Simmons in the wake of more allegations of sexual assault. In this video, we're going to be breaking down just some of the details coming out of an editorial, or sorry, a news report of 3 more women and the incidents that happened with Russell Simmons over the course of the past several decades. It's very in depth, and there's a lot of very uncomfortable details in this, and so we're not going to cover all of it. You can read it if you want to, but here are some of the details and what he's doing in advance of more of these potentially coming out. He said on Instagram, I believe today, that he's going to begin to properly defend himself. This comes after the New York Times story. He says that it's not his intention to diminish the Me Too movement in any way, but instead to hold his accusers accountable. It's just a statement about my innocence. And because, of course, saying that they are purposefully misrepresenting what happened could be seen as harming the movement or besmirching the movement. He's trying to tread a careful line there. He says that he will prove without any doubt that I'm innocent of all rape charges. But let's go to what actually happened. So this is the first. On work calls, he would talk graphically about how Drew Dixon, who's one of the accusers, aroused him. At a staff meeting, he asked her to sit on his lap. He regularly exposed his erect penis to her. Later that year, Mr. Simmons is alleged to have raped her in his downtown Manhattan apartment. Ms. Dixon said she quit Def Jam soon after, saying that she was broken. And so that is the first, both sexual harassment of a particularly graphic kind and then sexual assault that happened as well, directly impacting her career. Another, Tony Sally, a music journalist, said, we were fighting during an encounter at his apartment. She said no in response to him trying to initiate sexual contact. He then raped her, she said. 2 friends and a colleague confirmed that Miss Sally told them about the assault around the time it happened. Through his lawyer, Mr. Simmons acknowledged that he had dated Miss Sally, which she acknowledges as well, but denied any non-consensual sex. So that is again an allegation of rape coming after the cessation of a romantic relationship.
So this looks really bad. He vehemently denies it, and so the one part of his statement where he says it's not to diminish the Me Too movement, I'm just happen to be innocent. That's entirely possible. At some point, some guy will of course be innocent, and he's not meaning to diminish from any movement. He just doesn't happen to have done it, right? I don't know that this is that moment. These are very specific charges from a multitude of women who have corroborating witnesses from the time. They don't have witnesses to the acts. They have witnesses to coming out of those situations and telling, one case an ex-husband, in another case a therapist, this is what he just did to me, all the way back then. There's one of the women reported to the police They apparently thought they didn't have enough evidence to take action, but she did report it to the police.
Yeah.
And so, it's possible that all of them are making it up all at the same time. But
all at those times.
Yes, but it doesn't look like it. And, and so one of the accounts was particularly haunting. It's a woman who was trying to get into the music business. She, I believe, had gone to Stanford for some time, and then she goes and is trying to live her dream. And this is so other than the charges of sexual assault, which are horrific enough, of course, but it's the idea of like the oppression, the nonstop oppression. So if you want to get advanced in your career, you can't be like a guy and just do it on your merit. You have to constantly be exposed to guys trying to have sex with you who are your bosses over and over again. And if you do have sex with them, you get favors. But if you don't, then you don't get, then you're put back.
Or you get favors for a brief period and then you are cast off, or your reputation is ruined, or God knows what. It's really a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation.
I think that a lot of men, since they never experienced it, had no idea the degree to which women were systematically oppressed in this country for so long. That so many careers were thwarted. A lot of these women just gave up after a while, and one of them had produced a great hit. She could have had a great career, had gone on to another place where she was then sexually harassed again, right? And eventually just gave up on the music industry.
Yeah, it's damn near impossible to get ahead in some of these industries, and for this to be a hurdle, which is so disconnected from your talent, your work ethic, anything having to do with the normal things we would think that would affect whether you get ahead or not. That you get abused in this way, and it happens in a lot of industries. I mean, like even like in Olympic gymnastics, there's the doctor who sexually assaulted dozens and dozens of girls, like hundreds of girls. And so even as a child in a sport, you can't avoid it. And I mean, we know in acting, the concept of a casting couch has been around for a long time. But how often were conversations about casting couches the prelude to trying to do something about it? And I've talked to friends who think sort of there's something about these industries where they think, well, you go in and okay, so someone propositions you for sex, just say no. Not understanding that these are gatekeepers for the future of your career. And there's no respect for the implicit threat and pressure put on you. That this is not simply, well, circle yes if you'd like to have sex with me. If not, we'll watch your tape and maybe you'll make it in another way. That doesn't exist, okay? Once you throw in this element, that is all that matters. And I think that even now, a lot of people don't have a proper level of respect for how that perverts the system.
And if you're wondering why so many in the media world and politics are so many of these stories are coming out in those industries, a couple of different reasons. One, it might be happening with your local dentist, but the person's not famous, so you don't hear about it. That's of course true. But the second part of it is because these industries have more gatekeepers. So you go to law school, you become a lawyer. You go to medical school, you become a doctor. And so that doesn't mean that you won't have sexual harassment at law firms or in medical contexts. Of course there is, right? But it's more prevalent in these situations where there's a few guys who hold all of the power and they get to make or break careers. Well, that power gets abused far more often. And so that's why in media and in politics, you're seeing it a lot more than you are in other industries.
Yeah. Yeah, so the most recent details I saw in this particular case, I mean, well, first of all, going back about a month, Russell Simmons stepped down from his companies, perhaps sensing or knowing that some of these allegations were going to come out. At that point, one or two already had. And he continues to say that none of this is true. In fact, today he apparently took a polygraph to attempt to prove that, saying that any of the accusers are also free to come. Of course, polygraphs are riddled with problems of their own. They're not the foolproof thing they seem to be in TV. But that is the latest, and we'll see. Perhaps it is limited to these cases. We'll find out in the near future.
Okay, one more story, but this one's about a Republican.
Yes, and another interesting twist on the pattern we've been seeing in society lately.
Oh, sorry, we got to take a break?
Oh.
Okay, my bad, guys. We got to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll at least we got a Republican. I mean, it's probably shouldn't phrase it that way.
Yes!
I wouldn't put it that way either. But anyway, we'll tell you when we come back. right, back on TYT, Cenk and John with you. Lucius Tuck writes, and Cenk, I think you're missing the troubling fact of power dynamics as far as women feeling that they are in danger if they were to reject a man's advances. Men get frustrated when turned down and often feel that they are, quote, owed sex. No, I'm not missing it. That's why I said, look, it's easier for me to say, and I'm not walking in your shoes. And I think I pointed that very fact out in the middle of the story. But if at the same time that means, like, I just keep thinking about it, and I don't want to make it too personal, but I keep thinking about what I'm going to tell my daughter, right? And I don't think I'm going to tell her, don't say anything. You know, and it's an impossible situation oftentimes, right?
Yeah, the fear is that if you are clear, they will beat the crap out of you.
Yes, and I totally understand that. On the other hand, if you don't say anything and a guy thinks that everything is hunky-dory, doesn't help either. And so it's an impossible situation, guys. But look, at the risk of being overly honest about it, I'm telling you what all the different sides are. And if you say, no, it's unacceptable, you should never say anything like that, okay, that's your opinion. But I want to err on the side of clarity, that's all. And at the risk of going further, but I've got a son too, okay? So if somebody comes up and says, oh, I didn't tell him anything was wrong, but I was thinking it in my head. No, sorry, no. I don't know what that means. I was thinking it in my head, right? So we've got to come to some sort of understanding here about how people need to proceed forward, right? So don't assume people know what's in your head.
That's the goal of getting affirmative consent.
Yeah. So anyway, the malcontent asks, when will Rebel headquarters be available for members to podcast? So I'm hoping tonight. So sorry about a little bit of a rough start there. That's my fault because I rushed Rebel headquarters on. But I'm sure that we're going to get all the episodes for you guys if you're members. So just give us a tiny bit of time on it, and I think it's going to get fixed tonight. So you can always watch it live. It's right after the show. It's at 8:05, and we got 2 more great progressive candidates for you guys tonight. I want you to learn all about them and their opponents. By the way, yesterday we had Amy Villela on. She's running against a pretty terrible Democratic incumbent who's been charged with sexual harassment. And then right after she was on, in the morning I wake up, he's been charged with a second count of sexual harassment. Not charged officially, but someone has come forward and said he did it to me as well. So this is why it's nice to have Kiuen. I have trouble pronouncing his name. He's in Nevada. Yeah. Kiuen.
Looks like trouble for him.
Yes, and so why don't we get an uncorrupted candidate in there? Okay.
We'll try it for once.
Yeah, wouldn't that be lovely?
Maybe it'd be good.
Yes. Okay, all right, what's next?
Okay, more of the same, generally. Republican Representative Blake Farenthold has been under fire over revelations that back in 2014 he settled a case of sexual harassment for $84,000. Which would be bad enough if it was his $84,000. Unfortunately, it was your $84,000 that he used because he sexually harassed someone and got caught. And there he is. You can believe he sexually harassed people. So today, he has released a video talking about what his future in politics will or won't be. And here is an excerpt from that video.
I'd never served in public office before. I had no idea how to run a congressional office. And as a result, I allowed a workplace culture to take root in my office that was too permissive and decidedly unprofessional. It accommodated destructive gossip, offhand comments, off-color jokes, and behavior that in general was less than professional. And I allowed the personal stress of the job to manifest itself in angry outbursts, and too often a failure to treat people with the respect that they deserved. That was wrong. In recent weeks, there's been a renewed focus on the allegations that were made against me by a former employee several years ago. I want to be perfectly clear. The charges that were made are false. In spite of this, I understand fully that this issue has become a political distraction and that I would be forced to engage in a month-long campaign for personal vindication. That's not why I came to Congress. Quite simply, my constituents deserve better. They deserve a primary campaign that's focused on the serious issues facing our country and our state and fixing a broken system. Therefore, I'm announcing my decision not to run for re-election.
So there you saw, initially his apology, I guess, is it an apology? He said he didn't do it, but he was talking about the culture that he created there, which I found to be a sort of flawed way to characterize the situation because it doesn't seem like lots of people were doing bad stuff. It seemed like he was doing bad stuff, but he owned up to some generalities about his behavior and then denied any of the specifics, which is odd, but he is going to be stepping down. He's not going to be running for re-election in 2018. Now, interestingly, he talked about the primary there. Because the deadline to withdraw from the primary race in his congressional district has already expired, his name will likely remain on the ballot during the primary on March 6th, even though he theoretically will not accept it if he still goes on to win. Understand that it's not just that he might have to defend himself theoretically. He's currently under investigation by the House Ethics Committee for sexual harassment towards a former aide, Lauren Green. That was confirmed by Paul Ryan recently. And there's a number of other incidents that are coming forward. A former coworker of his has specific details, which we can get to. But overall, the interesting thing about this is he apparently believes that either it would be a distraction or that it would turn out that he did what they said he did and he might have to resign. And so he's preemptively coming forward and saying that he won't run again, but he is not stepping down. And so for basically half of his term, he will continue forward as a representative, voting on important bills.
Yeah, so 2 points here that I wanted to make. One is, I love the beginning of that video where he's like, now, I had no idea how to run a congressional office. I mean, I'm a total clown, I didn't know what I was doing. Then why did you ask for people's vote? Okay, that's not really a good excuse. I'm hoping that if you run, you think that you're up to the job. And part of being up to the job is running an office. It's what Trump used to say all the time, like, oh, once I get into the White House, I'll figure everything out. I'll know it so well, it'll make your head spin. No,
How'd that work out?
Yeah, one, how did it work out? Two, you're supposed to know that before you run for office. I don't want you to learn on the job if you're president or you're a member of Congress. So that was a very poor excuse. Second of all, distraction, it'll be a distraction. The world's worst excuse, I hate it. I can't stand it when Democrats do it, I can't stand it when Republicans do it. It's either you're innocent and what, you're gonna step down because other people in your party said it would be a distraction, okay? That's ridiculous. Or no, you did it, shut up and say you did it, and don't pretend that it's just because, oh, people will be slightly distracted. I don't even know what that means. You either did it or you didn't do it. And in your case, it's obvious you did it, you paid the settlement, now you say you're gonna pay it out of your, finally says, oh, now that you caught me, I was having the taxpayers pay it, but now at a later date I will pay. You did it, you did it, just say it.
Yeah.
You know, don't give me this BS about a distraction.
Can we go through a couple of these allegations that are additionally coming out? Because I just love the little twist at the end. So Farenthold has also been accused, in addition to the case that we've already talked about, of making sexually inappropriate comments by one of his other former aides, Michael Ricola. Ricola claimed that Farenthold joked prior to Ricola's wedding, better have your fiance blow you before she walks down the aisle. It will be the last time. No, don't say that, that's just terrible. He goes on to say, Farenthold joked about whether Ricola's fiance could wear white on her wedding day depending on if she had had premarital sex. That's fun from your boss. And then furthermore, outside of the sexual stuff, Ricola said this: every time he didn't like something, he would call me a fucktard or idiot. He would slam his fist down in rage and explode in anger. He was flying off the handle on every little thing. I couldn't find a way to control it. Now, CNN wanted to confirm or deny this, so they went to Farenthold, and Farenthold denied most of the staffer's claims, but said he did regularly call aides fucktards, but said it was in jest, not out of anger. Oh, okay. It was a lighthearted fucktard.
Yeah, look, we covered this story earlier, and this Michael guy's some new allegations. The more serious allegations are from the women that worked in his office, and they always had to have somebody escort him so that he wouldn't hit on women on the halls of Congress. He apparently particularly liked redheads, I believe, and so look, I happen to, and everybody's got a different thing, different standards and stuff. But you got to be cognizant that you're the boss, right? And so if you wanted to joke around with your friends, about what's going to happen after marriage, that's your business, man. Nobody's getting in. Like, I think people sometimes misunderstand these stories. Like, what, I can't say to Bob what's about his fiance or whatever? No, you can say anything you want to Bob as long as you don't. Bob's not reporting into you, right? And can you call your friend Bob a fucktard? Have at it, Hoss. Go nuts, right?
Yeah, I'd prefer if you don't.
but
I'm
not
old-fashioned, I guess. I don't know.
Not if you're his boss. Now, look, the sexual harassment stuff is why he's gone. But a note on just overall harassment: don't go around the office yelling at everybody. Right? So look, there's disagreements and sometimes there's just no way around the disagreements. And I know that the passions rise and it happens in every office, right? But if you're constantly going around yelling at your employees like, you idiot, then you obviously don't know how to manage anyone. Yeah, I mean, it's just an absolute failure in management if you're nonstop yelling at everyone. Like there's something's obviously gone wrong.
Yeah, and I mean, even to what he said about like admitting basically that he didn't know how to control this thing. He doesn't know how to have people under him, and yet he wants to be a leader of men and women, and he can't control his rage. Like you can have different reasons for wanting to be a politician, but I think the idea should be that you have your shit together and you think, in fact, I think I know what's going on. I think I could help other people's lives. This dude, he can't even maintain a space 5 to 10 feet around him. And he wants to be responsible for 400,000 plus people. That seems like a bad call.
Yeah, and so, and look, again, I don't, so part of the problem with these stories is that I don't want to be overly judgmental. So if you've lost your temper at work, hey, everybody has. It's not, okay, I get it, right? But if you're the boss and you do it nonstop, that's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, and so I just wanted to mention this because you brought up the people being worried about, hey, I can't talk about Bob's fiance and whether she had premarital sex, which just, like if I get engaged, I don't want to hear it. It's just, even if you're my friend, forget coworkers. My best friend, that's weird. Probably not gonna happen anyway. But in terms of because I've heard that a lot, the fears that we are criminalizing joking, we're criminalizing normal conversation. And yes, there is conversation, like in this case, about some of the things that he said, off-color jokes and things like that. But in this particular case, he's not resigning because of that. And so far as I know, and I haven't tracked every single one of these, I don't think any of these people in politics or media or any of these areas are stepping down and losing their careers because of off-color jokes and comments. That is the frosting on the cake of abuse and harassment. That's not what people are losing their jobs for. They're losing their jobs because they're sexually assaulting people generally. So you can have those fears and we should have that conversation as a society, but let's not imply that people's lives are being ruined because they made a joke.
Even in the case of a congressman, off-color jokes probably gets you, hey, don't do that anymore, maybe some sort of suspension, something like that. People like to take the most extreme example and then go, oh, that's all it is. No, that's not all it is. That's the tip of the iceberg.
Exactly. Okay, one more before our last break, right?
Sure.
Let's push through to one more. Earlier this week, Donald Trump effectively tweeted out that a sitting senator was a whore, which was big news for like 12 hours. What a world we live in these days. But the fact that neither Donald Trump nor his representative, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, could admit that what he had tweeted was inappropriate, at the very least seemed sexual in nature, I think that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, especially people in the media. Because we are living in a world where for the White House and for politicians generally, it doesn't seem that anything matters anymore or there's any recognition of reality or any consequences for what people do. And because of that, we have a bit of a catfight going on between Morning Joe and the White House now because of that frustration. And so here is Mika Brzezinski of Morning Joe talking about her concerns over how Sarah Huckabee Sanders dealt with the reaction to that tweet.
And I'll tell you right now, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, I feel sorry for you. I've started a hashtag support for Sarah, and get your mind out of the gutter. I seriously support you in your quest for truth, in your quest for goodness, in your quest for love of country, because you haven't made it there yet.
So that's what she said. Now, some people in the Huckabee clan didn't take well to this. I haven't heard a response directly from Sarah Huckabee Sanders yet, but we do have Papa Bear Huckabee, and here is what he had to say about Mika's criticisms of his daughter.
I was stunned that of all the people who are going to give a lecture on morality and family and marriage, it's going to be Mika. I'm sorry, but I just found that stunning. And the fact is, when I read the tweet by the president, I did not see it as sexual innuendo. I'll probably have to take half a baby aspirin tonight just to be able to get to sleep because Mika Brzezinski attacked my daughter, who is one heck of a strong lady, a great mom, a lovely wife, and a terrific public servant. And she deserves better from other women. And it just amazes me that even the women who say they're feminist are doing everything they can to discredit my daughter. And, you know, Mika can go pound sand somewhere as far as I'm concerned.
I am glad that we have found one area where the right respects feminism, and it's when they want conservative women to be free from any criticism on anything that they do. That is the only time they will use feminism as a defense.
Yeah, I just find everybody's reactions is absurd in this case. So
we have more absurdity if you'd like.
But let me start in on it. First of all, I get what Mika's doing, but you know, I find it slightly disingenuous. So the press secretary for the president is supposed to cover for the president. That's their job. And oftentimes they lie for the president. And oftentimes they do misdirection for the president. So like this whole disingenuous thing of like the press secretary is supposed to be an honorable person. Not really, no. They're not for Obama, not for Bush, and definitely not for Trump.
Look, I agree. Obviously that they're not supposed to be an honorable person, and they do typically lie. That's why Brett Ehrlich has started up his honest press conferences sketches, because we expect some mostly misdirection. You ask me a question, and now I'm talking about this. Oh, you can't catch me. And it could be that I haven't paid attention to press conferences that much, but it doesn't feel like there was as much brazen lack of acknowledgement for reality as coming out of Sarah Huckabee Sanders, and to a lesser extent, Sean Spicer. Spicer would do it too, but she will take something like, it's not like an interpretation of what a policy might do and you deceive about it. You have words in front of your face. Let's bring up the tweet, graphic 37. In case you didn't follow this from the beginning. Says that she was begging for campaign contributions and would do anything for them. And then she was used and disloyal to a man. To say that there is no sexual innuendo there, to say that him tweeting out the Islamophobic videos a week or two ago doesn't mean anything. His anti-Semitic comments, don't worry about that. When there's a quote in front of you and she refuses to acknowledge the truth that's there, whether Mika should have worded it differently or not, there's a frustration that we're not playing fair. You can lie, but lie right.
Nah, I'm not buying it.
No?
No, not at all. So we know within the context of Donald Trump exactly what he meant when he said to Megyn Kelly about Megyn Kelly, she was bleeding from her nose, bleeding from wherever. We know exactly what that means. You know what kind of a sick guy Donald Trump is, so you know what he was referring to here. But what is Sarah Huckabee Sanders supposed to do? Come out and go, oh yeah, the president's an absolute pig, and he meant sexually that Gillibrand would do favors for him.
You could say, you know, I'm sorry, it's an indefensible comment, and probably lose your job.
Of course,
you could lose your job. No, okay, but here's why you might. So that you can earn when your father goes on TV and says that she's an honorable person who deserves better. Because if you go out there and lie about the blood coming out of her wherever, and you lie about this, you're not an honorable person, you don't deserve better.
No, but
you're a political hack of the worst kind, and you deserve every criticism that comes your way.
But that I totally agree with. But my point is that my point is that once you sign up for being press secretary of Donald Trump, you have signed up for a world of lies. And you've signed up to cover his ass no matter what insane, horrific thing that he's going to do. So let's not pretend to be outraged that Donald Trump's press secretary will lie to us day in and day out. That's their goddamn job. And then on the other hand, Huckabee,
why can't you be honestly outraged that we are continually being lied to?
Okay, and then Mike Huckabee on the other hand, like all of a sudden he's a feminist. Like, oh, I can't believe that another woman would criticize a woman. No, you don't get to hide behind that. You're not a feminist. You never stuck up for other women. And just because you're a conservative woman doesn't mean that you can't be criticized. That's not how feminism works.
They all seem to think that though.
Yes,
coming from the books and Kellyanne Conway, it's all, well, if you are a feminist, then clearly you must agree with whatever the fuck I say day to day.
No, it means that women have the same rights, okay? And yes, of course you can criticize liberal women, you can criticize moderate women, you can criticize conservative women, because in their mind they think, oh, liberals are trying to control everything and feminists don't want women to ever be criticized. That's not what they asked for. They asked for equal rights. So they're like, oh, you criticize my daughter, she's a woman, that must mean that you're a terrible person. No.
Well, and you might be shocked to find out that some feminists disagree with other feminists.
No, is
different
that
schools
possible?
of thought, and people want to focus on different things. It's amazing, Mike Huckabee. Google it; you can learn a lot. But so Mika's wrong, and Sarah Huckabee Sanders is a little bit wrong, although we're not surprised about it. Let's see if maybe we can find somebody who has the right take on this, although probably not. Here is Joe Scarborough, a 100% unbiased defender of Mika Brzezinski here.
Hey, so I just saw that Huckabee clip. No, what a sleazy thing to do.
Joe, come on.
No, what a sleaze bag. Mike, you go and you actually talk about marriage. Mika never talked about marriage. She never lectured on the morality of any of that. What a sleazy thing for you to do.
I just think that they have
what a
an agenda.
judgmental, predictably stupid thing for you to do. It's unbelievable.
It's so funny. I've never watched that show, but I kind of want to because I've never seen a dynamic where like no, Cenk, no, come on, Joe, come on, Cenk, don't do it. What a weird dynamic.
This is the shtick they do all the time, and it's borderline hilarious.
Do they? Is it really like 3 hours of that? Of
Yeah,
them bickering?
kind of. Yeah, I mean, I don't watch it either, but I've seen endless clips.
It's better than them reading from a teleprompter, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. So Joe plays the "I'm protecting my woman" card here, like, oh, I'm going to show you how dare you say that about, because and if you don't know the background, Mika and Joe were married to different people. They both got divorced. Now they're going to get married to each other. That's their business.
Which is what Mike Huckabee was alluding to, effectively calling her insert whatever bad name you want.
Yeah, and Mike Huckabee is a dick, throwing that in there. Mika had never brought up marriage or anything along that line. Huckabee threw that in there just to be like, oh yeah, remember they fool around on it.
Yeah. What the hell did she say about marriage?
Mike Huckabee, I remember you singing with Ted Nugent about how that's pervert song that he has about how he'd like to have sex with the underage daughter of his neighbor, right? So spare me, okay?
Yeah.
And so everybody here is comically wrong. I don't pardon any of them. I condemn everyone involved in this play.
Okay, that seems fair.
Yes.
Okay, well with that we should take our last break. When we come back, we've got a story on one of the, at least new to me, negative consequences of hydraulic fracturing for natural gas, and this one's a doozy.
No, John, don't do it, John. Don't do it. Don't give him that story when we come back.
Don't.
Hey, it's the holidays, and you know how hard it is to find that perfect gift for that perfect someone? Well, guess what? The Young Turks are making it a little easier for you to find that gift this year. Now, you can buy a subscription for a TYT fan. Not for yourself, for someone else as a gift. And to make it even sweeter, it's only $25 for a 3-month membership. That's right, right now, you can buy a 3-month membership for someone who you know is a TYT fan for only $25. Happy holidays.
back on TYT. Onakazi writes in, also LOL'd for real hearing it. Huckabee wasn't struck down by lightning as he was flat out lying about how honorable his daughter was. Steph Moss says, so what's the point of having or listening to a press secretary? Well, Steph, my argument is there's actually no point. I've always been super annoyed by the press secretary thing, and they get huge respect within Washington, like, oh, Jay Carney and Robert Gibbs. Oh. Like their job is to go out there and and BS for the president.
They can clarify things. They can
theoretically, but they almost never do. It's like a little game they play. They know that the press secretary is supposed to BS, and then the reporters pretend to be outraged by it. It's a TV show. I hate that pretense.
Yeah.
Okay, Jeff Marr says Cenk has lost his mind. What Huckabee Sanders does is reprehensible. It's not the job of a press secretary to have no grip on reality.
Yeah.
No, Jeff.
Yeah, when you said that what she did is honorable and good, I think you went too far.
No, John, no.
No.
So no, I didn't say it. I didn't say that. So listen. No, of course what she does is reprehensible. What I'm trying to explain to you is, don't be surprised by that. Of course she's going to go live for Trump.
I will never stop standing for the truth, damn it.
Everyone in the Trump administration is reprehensible. Why are we having a bullshit conversation about whether they should do the moral thing? They all signed up to do immoral things. That's my point. Yeah. All right, my other point is you can still do Christmas shopping at shoptyt.com. Okay, that's
immoral.
Yes, you see John's. It's not peach, it's impeach.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can also.
Yeah,
and you can have a peach, I guess.
It's not I'm peach. It's impeach, and that's one of the shirts that gets comments all the time.
I'm not peach.
Make friends out there. You'll meet the kind of people you want to meet if you wear a shirt like that.
Yeah, wear this shirt and go down to the South. No.
Sure. You'll find the liberals in your town.
Among other things.
So shoptyt.com for that, and then of course give the gift of TYT this Christmas season, holiday season. So $25 gets you 3 months of membership. Give it to a family, friend, coworker, loved one. So tytnetwork.com/gift.
Okay,
what's next, John?
What's next is, I think, perhaps the most important story of the day. We've been reporting on the negative effects of hydraulic fracturing for natural gas for years now on TYT, going back. And today we've got a new one. And this one is absolutely horrendous development. It has to do with the effect that fracking has on your health, which we've known it has negative health effects for quite some time. Environmental groups such as the NRDC says that for people living near fracking sites, fracking can have severe health effects such as respiratory illnesses and cancer. Now, that can accrue over time, and as you're exposed to both the air, the water, all of that, that's terrible. But let's talk about what affects even more vulnerable individuals. A new study from the journal Science Advances found that fracking reduces the health of infants born to mothers living within 3 kilometers from a fracking site. But for mothers living within 1 kilometer, the effects were acute. The probability of low infant birth weight, meaning the infant weighs less than 5.5 pounds, increased to 25%. Nationwide, between the middle of 2012 and the middle of 2013, as many as 65,000 infants were exposed to pollution from fracking because their mothers lived within 1 kilometer of a fracking site. And that's just a period over 1 year. And obviously far more would live within 3 kilometers of a fracking site, which again would have health effects, not accruing over a long period of your life and increasing the incidence of respiratory illnesses and cancer, but literally affecting you as you are born.
Yeah, so it's possible that I'm not a naturally born lib, and so when I heard about fracking, I thought jury's out. I mean, we started this thing back when it started, right? And so it's not fossil fuels. It's a little bit better in that sense, but I want to see what evidence there is, and the evidence is beginning to come in, and it's not good. So does it cause earthquakes? Now, indisputably.
Yeah,
there's no question about that. I mean, hundreds of earthquakes in the middle of Oklahoma.
Yeah, we showed you the charts. That may be the scariest chart I think that we've ever shown, the rise in earthquakes in Oklahoma.
Yeah, so there's just no question about it. And now in this case, just look at the evidence, right? And again, I didn't prejudge it, I didn't presuppose anything.
I did.
Okay, John did more, okay. And folks, by the way, that they're not presupposing it. So like Josh Fox, who's worked a lot on this, he already knows a lot of this information. This happens to be new, but there's a lot of other damaging information. So in this case, so what they did was they looked at things that were 2 to 9 miles away from the fracking site, and there's actually not that much of a difference between your normal births and 9 miles from a fracking site. It's a rough description of this thing. So it turns out it doesn't affect you that much if you're far enough away from the fracking. So it's not a Chinese hoax. They weren't trying to jury rig it. So it turns out if you're far enough away from it, it's at least in the case of the infant, issues, the birth weight, et cetera, it's not that much of a problem. You get within 2 miles, and you're starting to see increase in problems for kids that are being born, and significantly. You get to within half a mile, 1 out of every 4 baby that is born, it weighs under 5.5 pounds, which then leads to all the issues that John talked about. You've got infant mortality, asthma, lower test scores, and I mean, it affects your development as a human being. I mean,
including average income later on in life as an adult.
Yeah, and by the way, if you're pro-life, you should be livid about this. It's happening to fetuses, right? It is causing enormous problems for them for the rest of their lives while they're in utero.
Some will die.
And some will die over it. That's exactly right. It leads to infant mortality. And it's happening to a gigantic 1/4, 25% of the babies that are that close to the fracking sites.
Yeah.
That jury's now in.
Thankfully, the other 3/4, they will be born at a normal birth weight, and then so long as they don't move away soon enough, will eventually have respiratory illnesses and cancer and stuff like that, I guess.
Yeah, so it doesn't really get better. Then you got those ailments, and then if you've survived all of that, and now your percentages are getting lower and lower for being able to survive all that, then you've got the earthquakes, let alone everything else. So is it worth it? We have renewable energy now, and solar energy creates more jobs than fossil fuel does now, and so we can actually get more jobs. We can have cleaner energy, and it's just because this is a little bit easier, and those particular companies are making that profit off of that.
Yes,
but it's not worth it for our kids. It just isn't worth it.
Yeah, I'm planning on, I gotta Indiegogo the money, but I do want to do a study if being born within a couple of miles of a windmill leads to lower birth rate. I'm not sure, but I'm really hoping it's okay.
All right, so we're out of time, guys. Rebel headquarters, we're gonna have 2 great progressive candidates for you guys. One is running against Stephanie Murphy, who is one of the worst blue dog corporate Democrats there is in Congress. And actually CNN even concedes that he's got a pretty good shot at defeating her. So I want you to meet him. And then Cori Bush has led the protests in St. Louis. She's won award after award. She's fought for her community. I want you to meet her. That's all gonna happen in about 5 minutes at 8:05 p.m. Eastern. So make sure you check out Rebel headquarters, and you get all the network shows if you're a member. And this is the perfect time to do it. tytnetwork.com/gift. 3 months for $25. John, thanks for doing the show with me today, and we'll see you. And John and I are going to do the post game after Rebel headquarters, so don't miss that. And Aggressive Progressive is tonight, so membership gets you a lot of extra content. Thank you, guys. Bye-bye. quarters, guys. Another great show for you guys and more great guests as progressives fight back against the establishment and hopefully win. And our first guest is a person that has an excellent chance of winning against what I view to be certainly a corporate Democrat. So I want to welcome to the show Chardo Richardson. Chardo, great to have you here.
Thank you, sir. It's a wonderful opportunity to be here with you.
Thanks, man. So you're running in Florida's 7th district. I want to get to your background in a second, but Chardo, you got an incumbent that's a Democrat in your district, Stephanie Murphy. So I think a lot of the establishment people would ask, hey, why bother running against a Democrat?
Well, just because a Democrat's in the seat doesn't mean that that's the person who should be in the seat. We need individuals representing us in Congress who are warriors, who are committed to the people and committed to the people's agenda and not corporations' agenda or the wealthy's agenda. We want people in our Congress who will speak up for us. That's the way our Congress was intended. At least the House of Representatives is to represent the people. And just because you have a D in front of your name doesn't make you immune to a challenge, and it doesn't mean it's your seat. It's actually the people's seat, in my opinion.
So, but what are the policies that Stephanie Murphy has, supported that you think are particularly problematic for progressives?
Supported? I don't know. Well, I can't say I don't know, but I think it's more concerning what she hasn't supported, which is Medicare for all, which is huge. You know, she's very into these small businesses, and that seems to be her MO. But the small businesses will benefit from things like Medicare for all and protecting dreamers and bringing a clean dream act. But we're just not seeing that. For example, with the appropriations bill, was the perfect opportunity to use your voice as a Democrat and say, you know, we're not going to vote for it or pass the appropriation bill to fund the government unless there's a DREAM Act tied to it or any other policy that would have been good for us, like net neutrality, if it was possible, or protections on Social Security and Medicare, those kinds of things that we need.
Yeah, and CNN's got you at a pretty good chance to win here, which is great. I mean, I'm not wedded to CNN's opinion on it, trust me, right? But if the establishment mainstream media also recognizes it, I think that's a good thing. So let's talk a little bit about what you did before you got into politics, and it might give people a sense of why everybody thinks you've got a decent chance of winning.
Sure. So before I got in, I was in the military for 12 years, just under 12 years. I joined in 2000. I participated in Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom. I was an aircrew member, traveled to many different countries, and then decided to get out and head to law school. Once I finished law school, I immediately started working on things like mass incarceration and wrongful convictions. While I was in law school, I would do felony juvenile interviews. I would do any kind of help I could give the public defender as a volunteer. And after completing law school, I decided to become my own advocate. So I started advocating for the end of mass incarceration. And that led me to the ACLU, where locally, where I became president shortly thereafter and was over 4 counties, Lake, Orange, Osceola, and Seminole County. Orange and Seminole make up my district. So Orange makes up a portion of my district. Seminole includes a larger portion of my district. And I also, now I work as a director for the teachers union. I've been very involved. I've served my community, whichever community I've lived in, from Big Brothers to Habitat for Humanity, to mentor, to teaching folks who were recovering from any kind of vice how to get their GED, tutoring, those kinds of things.
So, Chardo, let's talk about a specific policy, mass incarceration. So, we've got the war on drugs. It funnels people into this prison system, sometimes private prisons, but oftentimes state prisons as well, local prisons. So, what's your solution to that? So, is it just to end the war on drugs? What would you do with the nonviolent drug offenders that are in prison? I'm curious about what your take on that overall is.
I think the solution is that we end the war on drugs. That's our start. We also get rid of these for-profit prisons in this whole for-profit system. We can take all of that money that we're wasting on the war on drugs and look into rehabilitation for things like the opioid epidemic. But marijuana crimes, we should just do away with. We need to legalize marijuana across this nation, truthfully. One, it helps individuals who have certain health issues. For example, veterans with PTSD would benefit from a medical marijuana, those kinds of things. But to end mass incarceration, we definitely start with the war on drugs. We need to get rid of the for-profit prison system. It's abusive, and it definitely adds to the problem because they're paid for beds, just like with immigration. You know, there's the mandate by Congress that so many beds must be filled, and that's a problem. The end to mass incarceration would be huge for us as a people, because then we're no longer destroying communities. We're no longer destroying families. We're then having a workforce, individuals who can provide for their families, and that's what we need to do, in my opinion.
So, Chardo, I think that progressives have been beaten down so much over these last couple of decades with money drowning politics and corrupting politics that they feel like things are not possible. So when you talk about ending the war on drugs across the country and then actually liberating all those people who are nonviolent drug offenders, who are actually at most have a health issue, I think that people unfortunately now think like, oh, that's unrealistic. We can't really accomplish any of those grand progressive goals, can we? And so what do you say to that, Chardo?
There is nothing impossible. It's only impossible because the establishment has told us it's impossible, but it's not impossible. We can have a system where we're not incarcerating the most people of any other nation. We can fix that issue. I mean, we have over 2 million people in prison in this country, and it's possible. Other countries don't have 2 million people in prison. China has more people in their population. They don't incarcerate as many people as we do. So it's not an impossibility. I don't believe anything is impossible. That document, the Constitution and the other documents that go with it, were possibilities. They were outlined to control our government, and they had nothing to do with corporations. They had nothing to do with individuals taking seats and then holding them. They had nothing to do with two parties deciding what can and can't be done. It was a government of the people, and it starts in the preamble, we the people. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here. We all understand this, but the truth is nothing's impossible. We can change all of this, and we're seeing it with the elections that are going on as of late. Yep. And we need to put people in office that are going to do just that.
So Chardo's running in Florida's 7th district, and whenever we talk to candidates like Chardo, you know that you could always find a way to help them in the links in the description box below. So if you were in that district and you want to volunteer for Chardo, that's great. That's enormously helpful. If he's not taking any corporate PAC money, so if you want to do small dollar donations, it makes all the difference. While his opponent is getting a lot of corporate PAC money. So keep that in mind and check out those links. Chardo, one more thing. I don't know this. What's Stephanie Murphy's position on $15 minimum wage? Is she in favor of it or no?
I believe that she said she's for a raise, but not $15. I don't think she is. I don't quote me on that, but I do know that she's for a raise, but it's not.
Yeah, I just feel like if progressives win, we can actually change people's lives. So $7.25 is $15,000. $15, like they make it seem like it's impossible, it's impractical. That's only $30,000, a little over $30,000 a year. So I believe that it's got to be possible. Chardo, you're for $15?
I am for $15 a year, or excuse me, $15 an hour. There are individuals right now. I'm sorry, my light's on a timer. I'm still at the office. I'm wrapping at the office, but the lights are on a timer now, so I apologize for that. There's individuals that work in the Seminole County public school system that make less than $15 an hour. Some of them make $10. These are individuals that serve our children, and we can't even pay them a decent wage. There's nothing wrong with $15 an hour. It doesn't hurt anyone. It actually helps us because that money is then spent in the community and on small businesses, and it lifts us all. I mean, why are we okay with working poor, full-time job, people working full-time jobs and still being poor and still needing? We are a prosperous country, and we need to show that. We need to be that, and it's possible to do that. So I'm for $15 an hour, that completely. And I'd like to add one thing. Today, some of my friends that I used to work with in the civil rights and civil liberties fight, I got a text that a few UCF Dreamers were outside of Stephanie Murphy's office today, and they're on a hunger strike. These individuals, I'm going out there to see them tomorrow to talk with them because they don't like her response to Dreamers. So we need individuals in Congress who are for Dreamers and support the things that most Americans want, not the things that the wealthy or the corporations want.
Yeah, most of all, we need people who are going to fight for us, and that's certainly the sense I get from you, Chardo. So if you want to help Chardo literally keep the lights on, give a little bit of donations at the links below, and thank you for fighting for us literally when you served in Iraq and Afghanistan, when you served at the ACLU, and hopefully soon when you'll serve in Congress. Thank you, Chardo.
Thank you.
All right. We're going to take a quick break here, guys. When we come back, Cori Bush has been an absolute giant in organizing protests in St. Louis and fighting for civil rights. I want you to hear her story when we return. All right, back at Rebel headquarters. I'm actually going to read a couple tweets for you guys real quick. Kara Kurlov says, "Damn, is it just me, or did it feel like that show flew by in no time?" Well, thank you. We appreciate it. Yes, our shows move quick because there's a lot of exciting stuff to talk about. But I wanted to give a tweet from Rebel headquarters. Gabriella wrote in, "Loving Chardo's bow tie. Also, thank you for your service." Agreed on both counts. Now, let's go to another great Just Democratic candidate, Cori Bush. Cori, welcome to Rebel headquarters. Great to have you here.
Thanks for having me. This is awesome.
Okay, excellent. So look, I'm asking about your opponents first. I'm gonna get to you after that. Partly because that's the first thing that anybody asks about. Like, hey, you're in a Democratic district. In your case, it's a Democratic by 29 points. So there's no Republicans to worry about. Ain't nobody losing to a Republican in your district, okay? So it's just, it'll be decided in the Democratic primary. You got an opponent there, Lacey Clay. So why run against him?
Lacey Clay has been in office long enough to show the people what he can do and what he will do. I think that, so as a nurse, we give the new nurse 1 year to show us what they can do, and then we kind of know, morally, ethically, we know how they'll move and how they'll work. So I don't think that it should take this many years. He's been in office for several years. It shouldn't take this many years for us to know what he'll do. He's shown us what he can do, and St. Louis is I feel St. Louis can have more, so much more, where people are the focus and where what we need here on the ground is being taken care of. And he just seems like he won't step up to the plate to do that. The people aren't enough for him, but for me, the people are. I am the people I serve.
Yeah, and you're taking small donors. Most of his money is apparently coming from large donors, including Goldman Sachs. I just don't know why anyone in Missouri's 1st congressional district is taking money from Goldman Sachs. For what purpose?
Well, the thing is, he's not a St. Louis native. So I can't even look at him that way. We wouldn't do it because, that's not tied to us. We're straight from the ground people. We're straight from, around the corner. So he's not a St. Louis native. He didn't go to high school here. He didn't go to college here. I did. And so I want to make sure that I represent the people because I know what it feels like to be neglected and pushed back or overlooked. So I want to make sure that that's put in the forefront.
So, Cori, you used to be an early childhood educator. Now you're a registered nurse, but you've been at the St. Louis protests from day one, and I think most of the media acknowledges your leadership role there. And so I guess I'm curious, why just one day get up out of being a nurse and go, I can't take it anymore, and start leading protests?
I think that it was always in me. I learned protests when I was younger. I watched my father do, he was a part of protests and boycotts, but it wasn't for me. I went with Dad. And so those seeds were sown. But now, once I saw what happened to Michael Brown, immediately, I just wanted to see change. I wanted to see justice. And I didn't realize that we could be so far from it. And so I had this insatiable desire to see it. And since I didn't find it, I had to keep going back. And so even with the most recent protests, if we don't stand up and stay in the faces of our government, stay in the faces of the people that have the pen, if we don't do that, then they can continue to get away with what they've done. And then our people aren't helped. And that affects everything. It affects our wages. It affects our health care. It affects so many different areas. It affects education in our area if we just let them get away with these things.
So Cori's been named top 50 women of St. Louis, 2016 Deluxe Magazine's Power 100 Award. To me, the most important one, 2015 Woman of Courage Award from the Emmett Till Legacy Foundation. Cori, as you do these protests and people recognize you for them, I'm curious that if you were a congressperson and you now have a little bit of power, right? What would you do with that power? How would you begin to address the problems that you're seeing, that you're protesting?
So first of all, it would be okay to be a congresswoman and protest. But the thing is, I'd be pushing for, we only protest because there is a fight. So I'm pushing in several different areas. One thing is, because I have a name, because I have some power, even if I can't affect it on the federal level, because I have that name and I have that influence, I'm going to go after those people that I know can affect it locally and on the state level. So that I'm going to use my influence to do that, number one. And what that looks like is bills that should be actually being passed that affect the people. I'm going to be pushing that those bills be passed. We're going to work together. Also, we're going to remove that stigma that protesting is bad. We're going to remove that. We're going to make sure that people know that you stand up for what you need. No more are we going to go ahead and allow ourselves to be the voiceless group and allow other people to speak for us and to step on us. So that's what I'm going to be pushing for. I'm pushing for any person that's been pushed back, neglected, disenfranchised, pushed aside. And I can do that because I'm one of those people. I sit in that seat even right now. So I'm the one that can speak for that. Nobody else can speak better to that right now that's running for this office but me.
Yeah, and I love the name of the St. Louis protest. Expect us.
Expect us, yes, because we will be anywhere. We'll turn up wherever you are.
That's so TYT. I love it. Now, if you want to stand up with Corey, make sure you check out the links in the description box or in the comment section, depending on where you're watching this. You can volunteer for her in her district. You can raise money or help her raise money, and just find out more about her through her website. So, but let's dive in a little bit more specifically, Corey. So now let's say you have the power to pass any law you want, right? Wouldn't that be lovely? So for the African Americans in St. Louis who are being systematically abused, what would you change? What are the laws you would change to make their lives better?
So one thing is there is this new law, this Blue Lives Matter law that has happened here in Missouri. I would be coming against that. We have enough laws against us that are saying that the police are God. The police can't be touched, but they can touch us. We have these laws that are putting our children in jail. We have this new law that started January 2017 that says that our children that are in school, if you assault someone, and they're calling an assault even through a fight, that is now a felony instead of it being a misdemeanor before. And so it's just all of these things. We're pushing our children into the school to prison pipeline. It's so easy. So I will be coming for those things. I'm coming for a fight for 15. We have to have a livable wage that is tied to inflation. I believe that we need to make sure that our babies starting off in pre-K, that they get the nourishment that they need physically and emotionally, as well as making sure that they have the proper criteria that's teaching them what they need to move into the next place.
Sorry, Corey, just wanted to ask you about one thing that you mentioned, the minimum wage. Because in St. Louis, they had passed a pretty decent minimum wage bill, and then Missouri said, no, you're not allowed to stand up for your citizens in St. Louis, and they overrode it. So Lacy Clay, is he shaking the rafters to make sure that that's changed? And is he out there outraged that living wage has been taken away from his constituents?
Yeah, no, haven't seen him. Don't know where he is. I don't know where he stands on that because he stays pretty silent. When that happened, that was a blow to St. Louis because people worked so hard to get that $10 and then to just strip it. Because the thing is this, $10 doesn't put you in a place to where, oh my God, now you're making so much money that you don't know what to do with it. And now, we're gonna, you gotta help people to understand now, we got to have financial services to make sure you know what to do with this extra few dollars. No, it was just a way for people to start to move out of places of poverty and for them to just strip it away. And we're talking about people that don't live that life. So no, we haven't seen Lacy Clay stand up for this, but I'm going to stand up for it because I am the people and I know what it's like to make that amount of money. And I did it with 2 children.
Look, I love that. Maybe that should be your slogan. I am the people. All right, we're out of time. Everybody, please check out Corey's website. Go and help her in any way that you can. Wouldn't it be wonderful to have these fighters that actually are progressives fighting for you in Congress and grabbing power so that it could serve you instead of the donors? I think it'd be great. Corey, thanks so much for joining us on Rebel Headquarters.
Thanks for having me.
All right, guys. We are out of time here. We got the post game coming up for you guys. TYTnetwork.com/join to become a member. We'll see you there in a minute.